So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to this webinar on how to ace GMAT sentence correction. My name is Rajat Sudana. I'm one of the co-founders of eGMAT, and I'm going to be your co-host today. Along with me in this webinar, we have Payal Tandon. Payal is the other co-founder of eGMAT, and she is going to be our main host today. Supporting us in this webinar, we have Shraddha. Shraddha is a subject matter expert, and she's also going to be your co-host today. In this webinar, we talk about how to solve the easiest to the most challenging questions in GMAT sentence correction by focusing on meaning and logic. Uh, this is the we pioneered this approach in 2011, and since then this has been probably the most widely adopted approach while solving GMAT sentence correction questions. Now, this is a fairly application-based webinar, and to make sure that you're well prepared for this webinar, we ask you to go through a few video lessons. The video lessons are in verb ing modifiers, verb ed phrases, and so on and so forth. If you've gone through these video lessons, then that's excellent. But if you have not, then they are a part of your free trial. And post this webinar, you can log into your free trial and go through them. We also have some upcoming free webinars. We have a free webinar on a unified approach to solving every number properties question in less than 2 minutes. That's tomorrow. And then we have a free webinar on how to ace GMAT reading comprehension. So this very popular webinar. In this webinar, Pyle talks about the key reading strategies that if you apply successfully will help you improve your comprehension and consequently improve your GMAT RC ability in as few as 5 days. Since this is a free webinar and fairly heavily attended webinar, we ask a few leading questions. One of them is, when do you plan to take the GMAT? The other one really is, what is your target GMAT score? Let's get a few responses to these questions. All right, based on the data that I have so far, the biggest group with regards to when people plan to take the exam is those who have upwards of 45 days. We have a significant number of people who haven't taken their data as of yet. And then we have three almost equally sized groups in those who have their exam right away, those who have between 16 and 30 days, and those who have between a month and 45 days before their exam. With regards to the target GMAT score, uh, uh, the biggest group again is in the 730 to 750 segment over here. I think it's one but last is what seems to be the most popular choice. And for both the questions, we have a significant number of people in the 760 plus group, and we also have a significant number of people in the 710 to 720 group. And then 700 or below, or between 6 and 700, we have about 50% of the attendees over here. So with that, let me go right into the webinar pane. The screen will have or will be in the process of changing for you depending on where you are. I'm going to give it another 10 seconds or so. All right, I'm going to put in a poll over here. Let me just make sure. Let me see where I can get my yes, no question. So how many of you can see a slide? Let me just open this poll, which says GMAT sentence correction. All right, it seems no one can, and yeah, that's the same thing with the that I'm facing. So let me just stop sharing, and we're going to take about 30 seconds to upload the presentation once again, just to make sure that that each one of you is able to see the slides. I'm going to just stop sharing. Bear with me for a moment, and All right, let's just wait and see if this works. Otherwise, we'll. How many of you can now see the presentation? Okay, it seems pretty much everyone can. And guys, apologize. For some reason, I don't know what happened. I got kicked out of the webinar room. It seems that most of you did as well. And for those of you who are not seeing the presentation, I just request that you join again or wait for a few seconds, and the problem will sort out by itself. Okay, let's wait for about 10 seconds for the system to settle down overall. We have most of you back. I'm going to wait for another 5 to 6 seconds before we proceed. All right, once again, how many of you can see the presentation? Select yes if you can. All right, it seems pretty much everyone can see the presentation. That's wonderful. If a few of you are unable to see the presentation, then I would just recommend that you join again. Let's get the poll responses again. How many of you can see the presentation? All right, pretty much everyone right now. That is wonderful. Okay. So there are essentially three parts of this webinar. In the first part, we'll give a brief background about the company, who we are, what is it that we do, and how are we different from some of the other courses that you see, or some of the other companies that you see over there. In the second part of the webinar, Payal would take over, and that would be the core of this webinar. She's going to talk about the meaning-based approach for about 105 minutes, and then in the last part of the webinar, we'll have an open-ended Q&A. Now, before we had these disruptions, I asked this question, what's your target GMAT score? And about 60+% of you said that you're aiming for a score of 730 or higher. And then even though 60% of this group is aiming for a score of 730 or higher, statistically, only 6% of the people get to a score of 720 or higher. And this is despite the fact that when you look at the median scores at the top B schools, they seem to be going up. And this has been an upward trend that we've witnessed for the past few years or so. Now, what is it that people who get to that score do? A good number of them, or a good percentage of them, use e-GMAT. Why do we say that? When you look at the key stats on the world's leading forums, one is the number of verified reviews. The second is the number of success stories over the last 12 months. What you'd discover is that e-GMAT's been mentioned way more frequently than any of the other major prep companies. So why is it that students from e-GMAT are more successful than students from other prep company? What separates us from others? There's one thing where we are very different from how other prep companies provide help you ace the GMAT is how we approach our GMAT preparation, or what we also call as the architecture of our learning. So when you think about the learning architectures that exist today, there are two distinct architectures that exist today. One is what we call as the classical book-based architecture, and the second is what we call as a private tutoring-based architecture. Now, when you compare the courses from all the other prep companies, yes, they may have audiovisual instruction, yes, they may have quizzes, but their classical learning architecture is that book-based architecture. When you map e-GMAT to both these architectures, what you're going to find is e-GMAT centered a lot more around this private tutoring-based architecture. And so let's kind of see why one architecture is better than the other, and how and why e-GMAT is why do we say that e-GMAT is centered around this private tutoring-based architecture. To do that evaluation, let's kind of understand how do you get to that 720 or higher score. And to do that, you've got to do a few things, right? First, you have to create a path to that goal. Then you need to learn the concepts that you need to learn. Now, merely knowing these concepts isn't enough. You also need to know how to apply these concepts, and again, attain a level of mastery that where you are among the top 6 percentile, or even fewer of the students out there. So let's see how a book-based architecture approaches this problem. Now, a book-based architecture is all about autonomy. What it really means is that when you start learning from books, books will give you a set of study plans, and essentially you have to choose one of the given study plans for you. Books would not customize these study plans as per your strengths and weaknesses. Then you go on to learning concepts. Now, books are really good at teaching you concepts. They will teach. There's some really good books out there that will teach you concepts. The problem really is books do a really poor job in validating whether you've learned that concept or not. So when 1,000 people go through a particular chapter in a book, they learn to 1,000 different degrees, and student can't be certain whether he's learned it well enough to move on to the next concept or to move on to the application of that concept as well overall. But when it comes to teaching concepts, books do a fairly good job. The next piece is teaching you how to apply those concepts. As I said, merely knowing these concepts isn't good enough. You also have to know how to apply the concepts. And that's one area where books don't do as great a job. It's just the static nature of the book isn't very well suited to telling you what should you do in step 1, what should you do in step 2 and step 3 when approaching a problem. And also a book can't really tell you when you're solving a problem as to where did you make a mistake. Was it in step 1, step 2, or step 3? So consequently, a lot of people who study using books, they basically solve tens or even hundreds of questions, and only the best and the brightest are able to master applications. The last piece is evaluation of mastery. Now, people who go through books, the only means for them to evaluate whether they've mastered sentence correction or even modifiers in sentence correction is by taking mock tests. And so people who study using books takes tens of mock tests, and once again, when they take those mock tests, that onus of evaluation is completely on the student. Let's see how does a private tutoring based approach solve this problem. A private tutoring based approach works slightly differently. When you work with a good private tutor, the first thing that a good private tutor would do is to create a personalized study plan based on your strengths and weaknesses. And how does a private tutor find that out? He finds that out by evaluating you in every aspect. Then a private tutor would teach you concepts, and while teaching you concepts, a private tutor would constantly evaluate you and move on from one concept to the other once the tutor is certain that you've learned the concept to an appreciable degree. Then a private tutor also teaches you how to apply those concepts. And while doing that, a private tutor would tell you when solving a problem, what do you do in step 1, what do you do in step 2, and so on and so forth. And when it correspondingly, as you're solving questions, the private tutor will evaluate how well or how proficient are you getting at solving questions. And as you get to a certain level of mastery, a private tutor would move you from one topic to the other. So while you learn the same content in both these approaches, the extent of personalization, the extent of feedback is what is much more in this private tutoring based approach. And it's very easy to see why that approach would be more successful than a pure book based approach. So let's see why is it that we say that most of these other courses out there, or courses by these companies, they're based around that book based approach, whereas the EGMAT approach is much more around that private tutor based approach. So let's talk about how do you get to that score of 720, and we're going to take an example of a student who wants to go from a 600 to a 720 score. So that way it's a reasonable size score improvement. It's not very small, so you're not going from let's say a 680 to a 720, but you're going from a 600 to a 720, and it's not 500 to a 720. But again, the approach that we're talking about would apply equally well to both these score ranges. So even if you were at 650, 660, you wanted to go to a 720, 730, same approach would be followed. If you were at a 500, you wanted to go to a 700 or 720, you'd follow the same approach. So the first step is to make sure that you create that personalized study plan. And how do you go about doing that? We built an AI-based utility that allows everyone to build their personalized study plan, and it's called GMAT Planner. You can go to gmatplanner.com and you can really see this in action. So let's see how this utility works. So the first thing that it does is it takes your current quant and verbal score. So let's say your current quant score is Q44 and your current verbal score is V28. Now, even though both of these scores are 50 percentile, this utility understands that a Q44 means that you know a lot more in quant than what you would know in verbal if with a V28 score. So how it goes about recommending a target quant and verbal score is by first improving your quant score to a reasonable degree and then improving your verbal score so that you get to that 720 score. Now, if you like that, that's wonderful. I think this is an excellent recommendation, but if you don't, you can always change this. And then again, because this is AI driven, once you change one score, the other score changes automatically. So now you have a target quant score and a target verbal score. You still need to figure out, how do you get to that Q50 or a V38? Because you don't study quant or verbal, you study algebra. You study number properties, you study sentence correction, and so on and so forth. So, so it tells you how do you get to a Q50 by telling your arithmetic and algebra percentiles, and similarly, it gives you your percentiles on the verbal side as well. How does it calculate these percentiles? It calculates these percentiles based on hundreds and hundreds of score reports that our students have submitted. This data is not available in public domain. We've been able to reverse engineer this because of the volume of data that we receive. Now, this is one way to get to a V38 or a Q50. It also allows you to choose between various ways to get to these scores. Now, these are your target scores. Let's see what does this mean? So when you do something like this, and the tool has a few more steps to personalize this, your GMAT preparation is not a black box where you're studying in quant and studying in verbal. It is actually a set of 5 neatly defined milestones, 2 in quant and 3 in verbal. Okay, so let's kind of look at this now. And then it also tells you how much time you should spend in each of these subsections. So it tells you that you need to spend about 1.4 weeks in arithmetic, about 2.4 weeks in algebra, about 2.1 weeks in sentence correction, and so on and so forth. And you can really see this time is mapped out based on the difference between your starting and ending abilities. Now, some of you may be saying, how do you determine the starting and ending abilities? That's where the personalization, the first level of personalization comes in, where we have ability quizzes, where we determine, using which we determine your starting abilities, and then we have ability quizzes that also figure out whether you've achieved your target abilities or not. Then, so when you do this, your GMAT preparation isn't really is a very focused set of steps where you're going from a 60 percentile in sentence correction to, or a 50 percentile in sentence correction to a 90th percentile in sentence correction, similar starting to a similar ending score, and so on and so forth in reading comprehension. This tool then gives you a day-by-day plan as to what should you study when, and then you can see the number of hours per day that have been put in over there. You can customize that, you can change that, and as you change that, the plan will update by itself. Now, why did we spend 1,000 hours building this utility? We spent 1,000 hours building this utility so that each one of you can create your personalized study plan in less than 7 minutes. And I'll actually challenge you. Even those who worked with private tutors, you guys don't get as granular a study plan as this. And that's where, when you combine the world's best experts with the world's best technology platform, that's what you get with regards to personalization. Now, there was a question in the Q&A pod where someone asked, how does this architecture mirror that of a private tutoring based architecture? You saw that as the first step. Even in creating your study plans, we get to that level of granularity. Now let's talk about the second step, where we're teaching you concepts. Okay, remember, a private tutor would teach you concepts and give you feedback at every step, telling you how well you have learned. Okay, now let's see how we approach this. Here's a subject verb module in our sentence correction course. It's one of the 14 modules that we have over there. What you see over here is concepts being taught to you in the first 4 video lessons. Now, normally when you see video lessons, these are plain old video lessons where an instructor is talking and you're going through this. Our video lessons are very interactive, just as how you would interact with a private tutor, and then they have evaluations built into them. So after every video lesson, there's a quiz, and the quiz gives you feedback on how well you've learned. Also, we track how focused you are with regards to the amount of time that you've spent with these video lessons. We build the core technology to be able to do this, and this is something that you're only going to find at EGMAT. Now, how does this compare with video lessons offered by some of the other prep companies? One is you're not going to see the extent of interactivity. The second is you're not going to see that personalization. You're not going to see that feedback over here. This is the screenshot of subject verb module and other modules in the Magoosh course. And what you really see is these are simply video lessons or simply books in a video format. The time that you see over here is the time of the video, not the time that you actually spent on it. And again, the extent of comprehensiveness is not comparable. The next thing that a private tutor does is he teaches you how to apply those concepts. And we wanted to make sure that we do exactly the same. So when you learn subject verb, we teach you how to apply subject verb. When you learn parallelism, or when you learn modifiers, we teach you how to apply concepts in parallelism. So what we built was an entity called an application file. Right after you learn the concepts, we teach you how to apply these concepts, and then we also teach you how to evaluate your ability to apply these concepts, and not just on EGMAT questions, but also on questions from the official guide. Again, here you see feedback that is specific to you as well. And the application file is a beautifully designed entity where we tell you what do you do in step 1, what do you do in step 2, what do you do in step 3. And this unified approach is followed across the sentence correction course. So it's not that you have one approach to solve modifiers questions and another approach to solve subject verb questions. And this is how every module, whether you talk about a quant or a verbal module, is constructed in the EGMAT offering. When you look at the Magoosh course, first of all, you won't find an application file because, again, the focus is on not on teaching you how to apply. And you just find a quiz. Again, you don't see a score over here. Why? Because the intent is not to give you feedback, but just to give you practice. The next piece is evaluation of mastery, which is the last piece, because you want to make sure that you've learned sentence correction well enough before you move on to critical reasoning and so on and so forth. So how do we do that? And why is it evaluation of mastery important? The reason why evaluation of mastery is important is because you're not studying sentence correction for the love of it. You're studying sentence correction to hit that 90th percentile. And if you hit that 90th percentile, you can be very certain that you can move on to the next section. And when you hit that targetability score there and so on and so forth, you can be very certain that you'll get to that 720 score. To help you evaluate this extent of mastery, we have a platform called Scholarium in which we have ability quizzes. You can take a sentence correction ability quiz. It will tell you your ability score. The analytics in that in Scholarium will also tell you where you need to focus. Over here, this person needs to improve on comparisons, and that's the first piece. And then probably a bit of parallelism. If he or she does that, they can be very certain that they'll reach that 90th percentile or so. So right now you can really see that why some of the other courses out there are built around this book-based approach, whereas EGMAT is built around this private tutoring-based architecture. Now to do that, you not only have to create the content, but you also have to architect the technology around this. And who's created this content and architected this technology? Some of the world's top-rated instructors have worked on doing that. Instructors who've been reviewed a lot more frequently on GMAT Club. So while only 6% of the people get to those scores of 720 or higher, a good percentage of them do use EGMAT. With that, I've come to the end of this intro session. We are starting our quant and verbal batches today. This is how the schedule of a verbal batch goes through. We start with SC1 today, which is a free session. Then tomorrow we have SC2, and then parallelism and modifiers the following weekend. Then we do 2 weeks of critical reasoning, then about a week of reading comprehension, and then we end with the proctored mock test. Our Verbal Life and Quant Life courses come with the world's best guarantee. They offer a 4-point score improvement guarantee. What it really means is, let's say you have a V30. If you take Verbal Life Prep, we guarantee a V34. Otherwise, we refund your money. Even when you have a V37, we guarantee a V41, which is 93rd percentile on GMAT Verbal. Otherwise, we refund your money. Same thing with quant. We have a quant batch starting today, and again it comes with the plus 3-point score improvement guarantee, which means when you have a Q47, we guarantee a Q50 overall. And this is a pure guarantee. What it really means is we don't expect you to take the test multiple times. If you've taken the test once, and if you take this course and don't improve, we refund your money. And this is designed for working professionals. All sessions do take place on the weekend at 7 a.m. Pacific time. With that, if you want to stay updated with all things EGMAT, you're welcome to come and connect with me on my LinkedIn, where I have upwards of 11,000 students connected with me. I'd now like to invite Payal to start the subject matter portion of this webinar. As we do that, I'm going to mute myself for about 30 seconds or so. Payal, over to you.
Thank you, Rajat. Good morning, good evening, and hello, everyone. My name is Payal Tandon, and I will be your host for the rest of the session here. Let's make sure that all of you can hear me clearly. Can you please press yes if you can hear me? Absolutely fine. All right, sounds good. Okay, so let's get started with sentence correction. How to ace sentence correction. So the first thing that we're going to do in this session is we're going to first talk about what is your current approach towards sentence correction. And then we'll understand what is actually important to master sentence correction questions. And then towards the end, we'll put together a plan of action for you so that you can take that away from this session and get on the path to mastering sentence correction. Now, before that, before I get started with the first part over here, I'd like to understand what is the biggest problem that you face with sentence correction today? Tell me the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about sentence correction and you are not able to master sentence correction, so you think about some causes behind it. Let's get a few more responses. All right, so we're going to read through this list over here. I'm going to end the poll. Okay, answers seem subjective. Parallelism comes up the most. Okay, eliminating wrong answers, confusing content in limited time, not able to spot the right answer, don't know the idioms, confusion with words. So, from what we have read so far, there are some people who have issues with certain specific aspects about sentence correction, for example, parallelism, idioms, or verbs. Eliminating close answer choices is tricky. So, eliminating wrong answers is also an issue. Too many rules to memorize and apply. Okay. Focusing on grammar, lack of knowledge, confusion between two good choices. So again, so the first aspect was certain issues that you face with specific concepts in sentence correction. Then the second aspect is that even if you understand the concept, it's really you are not able to eliminate the answer choices. So you face issues with quote unquote close answer choices. Um, Unable to get the right answer in less than 60 seconds. So there are some people who are bogged down by the timing aspect of the test. Okay. Meaning remembering certain rules takes too much time to solve. Okay, so it appears that I now understand, okay, that where you have a problem, and we will be able to tackle all these issues really very effectively as we go through this session. And towards the end, you will definitely get a good plan of action so that all of these issues can be handled. So thank you for your overwhelming response here. Okay, so let's get into understanding what your current approach to sentence correction is. So you see on your screen a question. I want you to read through the answer choices and select the appropriate choice that applies to you. All right, that is good. Now let's move on to our next question. And here is your poll. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay, so this is where the problem arises. This is where the problem lies. So these were the two questions that I asked you. Now let's evaluate your responses here. 62% of the class agrees that understanding the meaning of the sentence is the most critical piece to mastering sentence correction. Now, when it comes to your responses for the second question, majority of you, 78, almost 77.5% of you selected choice number 2. And this is where the problem comes. The first question here tests what you think is important. The second question here tests that, okay, now that you know what's important, how do you apply that? How do you put that in action? And that is where the disconnect is. Because you are not applying what you think is important, that is where the problem is. Essentially, what I'm trying to say over here is, yes, you understand that meaning of the sentence is important, but you don't know how to apply that importance of meaning into your approach so that you can solve sentence correction questions. Okay, and the reason for that is that you did not select choice number 3 for question number 2. So you know meaning is important, but you don't know how to implement it in your approach. And that is what we're going to be talking about in this session. We are going to be learning as to how you can avoid all these things to happen. So first of all, we learn why is role of meaning so important? Why is meaning so very important in sentence correction? So we're going to understand that. Secondly, we're going to understand why should we spend more than 50% of our time on choice A. Okay, we are going to go into the depths of that. And then we're going to understand, okay, how does this play into the whole timing aspect of the test? If I'm telling you that you should spend more than 50% of your time on choice A, then doesn't that do injustice to the remaining 4 answer choices in the sentence correction question? So we are going to talk about that aspect. And then at the end, we're going to talk about our plan of action for you to get to that 90 percentile ability in sentence correction. Okay, so with this, let's now solve a very simple question. All right. And here's your question. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the question screen, and I do not, I will not be timing you guys. So just take your own time. As soon as 50% of the class has selected the response, I'm going to give you a 10-second warning. So can you please click on still solving here before you get started with solving the question? That way I know how many of you are actively engaged in solving the question. All right, sounds good. Go ahead. All right, last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll. Wow, that is by far the maximum number of votes for choice D ever in any of these sessions. So almost 90% of you have selected choice D as the correct answer, and D is indeed the correct answer. So again, this question is very straightforward. Let's go through it real quick so that we all are on the same page with regards to this question. Samuel has decided to allocate more time for his GMAT preparation even though he getting additional responsibilities at work. Now, when you read this sentence, you have to try to understand the meaning. So essentially, what the author is trying to say is, even though the responsibilities at work have increased, at the same time, Sam has decided to spend more time on his GMAT. Now, why is there a contrast here? Even though represents a contrast, so why do you think that the author has mentioned has what is a contrast here? When you say two opposing thoughts, why do you think they are opposing? Yes, absolutely right. Study versus work. He has more work, should give less time, but he's still persistent. Absolutely right. Now, look what has happened here. This is a simple sentence. It's a short sentence. It's a simple sentence from the standpoint that all of us can relate to it because it applies very well to our current situation, right? And that's why when you read the sentence, you picked up the clues from this sentence with regards to even though presenting a contrast, and you were able to so easily understand why the contrast exists, right? There was no issue in the understanding from that perspective. And that is the level of understanding of meaning that you need to have regardless of the context of the sentence. And that is the skill that you need to build. Now, if I change the context here to, let's say, some biology related sentence or some historical context, you would have had to make an effort to understand the meaning of the sentence. And that is the part which we are going to focus on in this session as to how can you do that? What is the process that you should utilize in order to be able to do that? Okay. But it's really good that if the context is very straightforward, you can understand the meaning of this sentence. That is really good. Okay. So that is the first step to do, always to understand the meaning of the sentence. Now, we obviously know there's something majorly wrong with this sentence. There is no verb. And again, I'm just breezing through this because almost everyone got this question correct. Okay, so here for choice A, we know that there is no verb for the subject he. So we need to select the choice that has the verb for subject he or that doesn't require a verb. Now we look at choice B. Why is choice B wrong? What's wrong with choice B? There is no contrast. Absolutely right. The author intended to present the contrast, but now there is no contrast in this sentence, and that's why choice B is wrong. Okay. Let's look at choice C. Choice C is wrong because there is nonsensical meaning coming out of this sentence. There is no timing relationship here, right? That's why choice C is wrong. Now, choice D is absolutely correct, but notice with choice D, what's happened is the structure of the sentence has changed. Now, despite getting structure doesn't really require a verb because it doesn't because of the construction of the sentence, right? So again, what this choice tells us is in the grand scheme of things, we need to have a very solid understanding of what all different constructions can be used in order to express the same meaning. Again, that's where your exposure to variety of sentence structure comes into picture, and that's something which we are going to talk about in your plan of action. Okay, so choice D is absolutely correct. Choice E is wrong because again, it's a very nonsensical causal relationship. This causal relationship doesn't make sense in the context of the sentence. Okay, so what we've seen over here is meaning can be distorted in various ways. That is why you absolutely need to understand what is that the author wants to communicate. And that's something that you get from choice A. Okay, what is the author's intended meaning? Okay. So now we're going to apply this understanding on an official question. Okay, so slowly you're going to see the difficulty level of questions increase in this session. So let me bring about question number 2. So can you all please click on still solving? All right, here you go. Last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay, so the correct answer is choice B, and as you can see that the number of students who have selected the correct answer choice has decreased. It's about 64%, really down from about 90% for the previous question. And this is very much understandable. Okay, so let's understand how we're going to solve this question. Now, as I did for the previous question, the first step always is to understand the meaning of the sentence. Now, in the previous question, there wasn't as much effort required to understand the meaning because it was, first of all, a very short sentence, and secondly, the context was very much, very much familiar to all of us. So now, in this sentence, you'll see that there is some more effort required on our side to understand the meaning. Okay, and that's a very important skill that all of you need to build upon. To build upon. So let's start reading the sentence. Next month, state wildlife officials are scheduled to take over the job of increasing the wolf population. So I'm going to pause here. I'm just going to understand what the author has said so far. Next month, something is going to happen. So this sentence is set up for something that's going to happen in the future. Next month, state wildlife officials will be taking over the job. What is the job? Job is to increase the wolf population. Okay, so far so good. Then I start reading. In the federally designated recovery area. So wolf, increasing the wolf population where? In this federally designated recovery area. Then there's a comma here. The number of which will however ultimately be dictated by the number of prey in the area. The number of which, okay, so now this says that the number of wolf, which, what should which refer to? Tell me here. Which should refer to wolf, right? The number of wolves will, however presents a contrast, ultimately be dictated by the number of prey. What does number of prey mean? What does number of prey mean? Food for wolf. Absolutely right. The amount of food that is there in the area. Okay. So now you've understood the individual parts of the sentence, but now you need to put it all together. There is this contrast that is stated in the sentence. Now, what is that contrast? For that, you have to first put all the pieces, you have to first understand each and every piece of the sentence, and then you need to put it together. So what do we know? What we know is that next month there will be some people who will be responsible for this specified job. What is the job? Job is to increase wolf population in this specified area. Now, what is the contrast here? The contrast is, yes, these people will be responsible for this job, but really, ultimately, it's the amount of food that's available for the wolf that's going to determine the number of wolves in this particular area. Okay, so that's the contrast here. Yes, these officials are responsible, but really it's not in their control. Why? Because the number of prey, the amount of food, is what determines the number of wolves. How many of you had this level of understanding of the meaning when you read the sentence on your own? I apologize. I was muted and I was talking all along. Okay, so let me repeat. Where did I miss you guys? When did when was I not audible? At what point? After which poll? How many people understood? Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so my question was that for people who did not understand the entire meaning of the sentence, what was the part that you didn't understand on your own? And my guess is that you understood specific chunks, but you didn't put it all together. So I want you to understand. So I want you to tell me, okay, you didn't understand the contrast, which is putting it all together. How about the others? Couldn't put it together. Okay, so that's the skill which you have to start building. Okay, yes, you understand specific chunks, but you have to put it all together. You have to understand what does number of prey mean in the context of the sentence. Number of prey implies that that's the food that's available for the wolf. Okay, so you need to understand that. Okay, so good, thank you. Now let's move on to our next step. So the next step always is, once you understand the meaning of the sentence, then you have to figure out what are the errors that exist in this sentence. Okay. Okay, so the issue over here is with the pronoun. So you basically have this list, your subject, verb, verbs, pronoun, modifier, parallelism, right? So you have all these you have these specific list of errors. So you simply go through this list one by one and you figure out, okay, is there a subject verb error? Yes or no? Is there a verb error? Yes or no? And so on, right? So you go through this. So subject verb, from the subject verb standpoint, do you see any issue here? Absolutely no. We don't see any issue from subject verb standpoint. From verb standpoint, do we see any issue here? No, we don't see any issue from the verb standpoint. From pronoun standpoint, let's consider the pronoun which. What is the problem with this which? Which, we know technically from logical standpoint, it refers to the the wolves, right? The number of wolves. However, how has wolf been used in this sentence? Wolf has been used as an adjective. Wolf population. So this adjective is describing population. So that's how wolf has been used. Okay, which means that your pronoun which cannot refer, because it cannot refer to an adjective, it cannot refer to wolf here. And that is what is the problem with this sentence. Okay, so again, think about it. We knew the grammatical rule that a pronoun should always refer to another noun or a pronoun. Okay. And then we understood from the meaning standpoint what is the role of wolf. And then we put it all together and we said, okay, this is where the issue is. So you need to have that conceptual clarity, but that alone is not sufficient. You need to have that meaning based focus, and only then you can put the two together in order to solve a particular question correctly. Now, my question is, how many of you were able to identify this pronoun error in the original sentence? So quite a few of you, about half of the class, was not able to identify that. Now I have a question which could also be referred to the area, which can also refer to area, but logically it doesn't make sense. Well, yes, you have to always understand what makes logical sense here. It doesn't logically make sense for which technically can refer to any noun in the sentence, right? But you have to see what makes logical sense, and then you have to figure out whether that logical sense actually is applicable, whether that logical antecedent can make sense from grammatical standpoint as well. Okay, so which technically refers to, okay, now the next question is, what about population? Well, again, the number of population, what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything, right? You have to go by what you want, and that's why when you understand the meaning of the sentence, it's very important to understand, okay, logically what is the author trying to say. The author is not nitpicking on, okay, let me see if which refers to population makes sense. No, the author is simply trying to communicate a sense. He always writes a sentence with a particular intent. His intent is to communicate that, okay, these wildlife officials have been designated to basically have been given this responsibility, but frankly that responsibility cannot be fulfilled. Okay, all right. So now that we understand all the issues in choice A, and now that we understand each and every role played by the entity in the sentence, our error analysis became very straightforward, right? Now what we have to do is bring all of this together and eliminate the incorrect answer. All right. So let's go through choice B. The size of population, however, will ultimately be dictated by the number of prey in the area. Now here, the population, what has the population done? The population now refers to the wolf population. So now the author has removed the pronoun altogether, and by utilizing this expression, the population, he now refers to the wolf population as intended. Okay, so this choice is absolutely correct. Let's take a look at choice C. When, however, the number of wolves will. Now, when has no bearing on this sentence because there is no timing relationship here at all. Okay, so that's why this choice is wrong. Let's take a look at choice D. Area, the number of which will, however. So again, choice D has the same pronoun issue. Okay, let's take a look at choice E. But the size of population ultimately be dictated. Now here you have an issue that there is no verb, the verb form is not correct, but the size of population be ultimately dictated, that doesn't make sense. The verb form is incorrect. Now for those of you who selected choice E as the correct answer, E and D, actually quite a few of you selected E and D as correct answers. But before I go there, let me let me address this issue of prey versus predators. I thank you so much for bringing that for bringing this up. At times you will get confused with the meaning of such words, prey versus predators, because again we don't use these terms very frequently. We know that there is a connection between the two, but that's the time when you really have to figure out, does that make logical sense? If you're talking about number of predators or number of prey, again you have to figure out what makes sense over here. right? And so, again, from the context, you have to infer the meaning of certain words. And in this case, because you were confused between prey and predators, you were able to figure out from the context to figure out what it actually means. So it's absolutely fine to utilize context in order to understand the meaning of a certain word. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to open the poll up to get responses from you with regards to choice D. Why? So people who chose choice D selected it because most likely you were not able to identify the which error in choice A. That's why you chose choice D as the correct answer. For those of you who selected choice E as the correct answer, the first giveaway for this choice, even if you weren't able to identify the incorrect verb form, is the connection error. But the size of population ultimately be dictated by the number of prey. It should be, you cannot connect an independent clause that begins with but utilizing a semicolon. It has to be connected with a comma with the other sentence. Okay, so that's the giveaway connection error. And these connection rules is what you learn in the foundation article that we have in our course. Okay, so that's the first giveaway. The second giveaway is the incorrect verb form. Now here subjunctive verb form has been used, and again, if you don't know what a subjunctive verb form is, no need to worry about that. You learn about that in the verbs section in our course. This is an advanced verbs file, so you'll go through the basic verbs file and then you'll go through the advanced verb file. So there you'll see that but the size of population ultimately be dictated by the number of prey. That is subjunctive verb form, and there is no utility of that verb form in this sentence, and that's why choice E is wrong. So for you to eliminate choice E, it was required to understand the grammatical concepts. The first concept being with regards to the connection error, and the second thing with regards to the verb error. So as you can see, there is that there is that confluence of meaning and grammar that you have to understand. Okay. All right. So with this, let's now move to the next question. But before we move on to the next question, what's important is, the focus on meaning. Why is that so very important? And it's very easy for me to sit here as an instructor to tell you that you need to understand the meaning of the sentence. Meaning is so very important, but at the same time there is that already preconceived notions in your mind that you have to solve a particular question in a certain amount of time. So that's why it's very important for you to learn from the experiences of the other students who've been in your shoes. And here is an example of one of the many students who've benefited from this focus on meaning. Before using the meaning approach, Nishant struggled to finish verbal section on time. This was despite knowing all the sentence correction rules. But once Nishant embraced this approach, he realized that he was naturally able to solve sentence correction questions with high accuracy in 45 seconds or fewer. Okay. And that is something which you have to understand. If you focus on reading slowly to understand the meaning of the sentence, you will ultimately be able to get the essence of the sentence, and that is going to help you with selecting the correct answer choice. Okay, so don't misconstrue spending more time on understanding the meaning to imply that you won't have enough time to solve the question. It's actually the other way around, as you can see in the case of Nishant. Okay, so Nishant focused on reading slowly to understand the intended meaning, and he was able to answer sentence correction questions in fewer than 45 seconds. Okay, so he was admitted to Ohio Fisher with full fellowship, even though he applied very late in the process, almost in round 3. And the reason I love this story is because here is a guy who was stuck at 570, and he was wondering whether he would ever get into any B school, and not really the top B school of his choice. But in the end, with all his hard work and with the right strategy, He was not only able to get into a B school that's ranked highly in operations management, but was also able to secure a full ride. Okay, so I strongly advise you to go through his video debrief here at this link, and just it's very important to understand what others have faced and what others have been successful with, so that you can apply those strategies. Because I know there are so many strategies floating around in the market today, and it's very obvious that students such as you will get confused as to what is the right strategy for you. Again, that's why it's very important for you to understand each and every strategy and then figure out, okay, what has worked for other students. Okay. All right. Now, Nishant has also written an amazing debrief on GMAT Club, and in just 1 week, this debrief became one of the most appreciated stories of 2018. Now, in his debrief, he further outlines how he imbibed and learned various core skills to improve from V27, that's 40 percentile, to V41, that's 94 percentile. When I shifted from classroom or self-study coaching preparation to EGMAT, the focus on solving problems by understanding the meaning of the sentence was time-consuming. But soon I picked up the trick and was able to solve sentence correction questions in 45 seconds. So again, the only problem I have in this sentence is with regards to trick, because there are no tricks. It's really, he picked up the skill, and that is what I would recommend all of you to do. Okay, but again, the key thing over here is, yes, understanding the meaning of the sentence may appear to be laborious in the beginning, but ultimately, as you build up on that skill, you will be able to solve the questions in less time. Okay, and what's interesting is that if you download his ESR, you will notice that he secured 94 percentile in sentence correction, and that was the highest amongst any of the sections. Now, here's another one. As we are talking about the success stories, let's get another one in. This is a success story of an individual who sets very high standards for herself. Samia works at McKinsey. She's been a topper all her life, and yet she struggled to score a 760. She really struggled with sentence correction, and she could not figure out why in some SC questions certain answer choices were incorrect and how to arrive at the correct answer in a definitive manner. Now, because of this, her score was stuck in the low 700s. She realized that she needed to take another look at sentence correction in a completely different light. And it was then she discovered the focus on meaning through this very webinar. Once Samia enhanced her approach, she realized that she could get to the correct answer in a definitive manner by focusing on meaning. It is this confidence that propped her score to a 780 with a better than 99 percentile on GMAT Verbal. So again, regardless of what your starting point is, Samia started in low 700s, right? Nishan started at 570. So regardless of what your starting level is, it is this meaning, the focus on meaning that takes you from what your starting point is to where you want to end up in your GMAT score. Okay. All right. Well, there's a student here who knows Samia. Good. So you can talk to her and understand what worked with her in sentence correction. Again, we have her video here as well for all those who don't know Samia. So yes, you're more than welcome to look at this video interview. Good. All right. So now with this, let's solve this other question. And now the difficulty level of the questions is going to increase further. Okay. So again, I don't want you to get bogged down by the complexity of the sentence. Just do your best. Right now, I don't care if you get the correct answer. What I do care about is that are you solving the question in the right manner? Okay. So let's go through this. First of yes, please click on still solving here. All right, last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. I apologize. The poll results were broadcasted, so I apologize for that, and thank you for bringing that to my attention. So, all right. So I hope that you guys didn't change your answers because you saw others were marking choice B as the correct answer. Because the accuracy for this question is unusually high. Usually I get about 56% or less than, so less than 55%. But again, that's okay. Doesn't matter. I understand when we are at that verge of selecting, is it B, is it C? You know, if we get a little nudge from external factors, we are bound to select choice B in this case. Yes, thank you for being honest. I really appreciate that. Okay, so let's go into the question now. And one more thing that I want to just tell is I have a bad throat today, so if I suddenly become mute, that's just because I'm coughing. So don't think that there's anything wrong at your end. Okay, so all right, let's try to understand the meaning of this sentence now. Because diegetic music actively referenced in the film rather than confined to the background. Now, this, how many of you felt that there were just too many new words in this sentence? How many of you felt that? Yes, absolutely right. A number of you would have felt that, okay, it's just too many new things in this. The context is not something which is very familiar to us. So, and that's going to be the nature of majority of sentence correction questions. Okay. So, that's where the concept of or the skill of strategically pausing to understand the meaning of the sentence comes in very handy. Now, what do I mean by strategic pausing? What I mean by that is when I read the sentence, I should not consider the sentence as a standalone, as a building block. I need to consider individual parts of the sentence as the building blocks of the sentence, which means that I need to pause at those building blocks, need to understand that meaning, and then move forward. Okay, so that's what I'm doing here, and there are different kinds of pause points, and all of this strategic pausing, the skill of strategic pausing, we teach in our course called as master comprehension. And master comprehension course is a very important foundation course for all of verbal. So for those of you who have started verbal prep, how many of you have gone through master comprehension course? Okay, so I want all of you to go through Master Comprehension course before you begin your sentence correction CR or RC. Okay, I have a question here. How long will this webinar take? Another hour or so, easily. We still have two more questions to discuss, and then we still have to put together your plan of action. So about an hour easily. Okay, all right. So how do I apply this strategic pausing aspect? So basically, I have to pause at different points, and those are called as pause points, and that's something which we teach in our master comprehension course, which is which is under the verbal course listing. Okay, so let's do that. Because diegetic music, comma. Now, comma is a very natural pause point. So because diegetic music, let me shorten diegetic music as DM. Okay, so and there is the presence of because really tells me that there is a causal relationship. There is some cause and some effect in the sentence. Okay, now I read further. Actively referenced in the film rather than confined to the background. Now this part here obviously describes diegetic music. It gives a characteristic of diegetic music. And what is that characteristic? I need to understand that. It is actively referenced in the film. It is used actively in the film rather than being stuck in the background. Okay, so it's not background music, it is actively utilized in the film. Okay, that's one of the characteristics of diegetic music. Invoking a sense of verisimilitude. Invoking a sense of verisimilitude is again telling me something more about diegetic music. That diegetic music invokes a sense of verisimilitude. Now, verisimilitude is a absolutely unfamiliar word. I am not at all familiar with this word. Okay, the idea that art can express a truthful version of reality, but the author actually gives us the meaning of verisimilitude. The idea that art can express truthful version of reality. That's what verisimilitude is. Okay, so far so good. Filmmakers creating period dramas use it often. Okay. Now, this part of the sentence, filmmakers who create period dramas use it often. Now, what is it here? What is it here? It's diegetic music. Absolutely right. It's diegetic music. Now, again, this is where your conceptual clarity comes into picture. It can technically refer to any noun in the sentence, but here we know we have to go by what makes logical sense. Okay. Logically, it makes sense for it to refer to diegetic music. Okay, why? Because we are talking about diegetic music here. That we are presenting certain features of diegetic music, and we are saying that okay, filmmakers who create period dramas use diegetic music often. Okay, why not verisimilitude? Because again, it doesn't make logical sense for it to refer to verisimilitude. Look at the role played by verisimilitude. Verisimilitude is simply presenting a characteristic of diegetic music. Okay, diegetic music is actively referenced in the film. It invokes a sense of verisimilitude. Filmmakers creating period dramas use it often. Now, the main part of the sentence, the main focus of the sentence is diegetic music. Okay, so that's why, but verisimilitude has been simply expressed as an extra information about diegetic music. Okay, so you have to understand what the focus of the sentence, what the focus of the author is. Okay, and that's how you figure out what makes logical sense. Okay, again, grammatically, it can refer to verisimilitude. There is nothing stopping it from referring to verisimilitude. But logically, what makes sense? Okay, now let's go back to our, so we understand each and every component of the sentence now. Now, how many of you felt that when you read the sentence, when you came to filmmaker's part, that there was a big disconnect in the sentence? How many of you felt that? It is very obvious to feel that way because that's because this author has not done a good job in writing this sentence and constructing this sentence. But whenever you experience that, take that as an indication that there is something majorly wrong in the sentence. But don't stop short of reading the remaining part of the sentence to understand its meaning, to understand its role. And that's what we did here. We understood filmmakers part of the sentence, and we understood what it's saying individually, independently. Okay, now that we understand the roles of each and every entity, we now put it all together. Okay, the author initially said that there's going to be some cause and effect. Okay, and the sentence is about diegetic music. Okay, now the author is presenting certain aspects about diegetic music, certain descriptive information, and then he starts talking about filmmakers. Okay, so that is what this sentence is. So I don't know what the cause was, I don't know what the effect is, and that's because the author has not written the sentence properly. Okay, now whenever I feel this way, okay, whenever I feel that okay, the meaning of the sentence is not clear, but I know the individual parts of the sentence, I should always go, before looking at the answer choices, I should always understand the logical meaning, I should infer the logical meaning. Okay, and that's a very big misstep that students do. They may do the process, they may follow the process till this point, but as soon as they feel that the meaning is not clear, they jump to the answer choices to find clues to what the meaning should be. How many of you do that? How many of you look at the answer choices, the incorrect answer choices or the remaining answer choices to figure out what the meaning should be? And this is a very big misstep. Do not do that. While this strategy may work for, easier questions, when you get to solving difficult questions, and that is what your aim is, to solve difficult questions accurately, you are definitely going to fall in the traps that are created by the test maker. Okay, we create those traps when we create our content, and we've seen those traps created in the official content created by the GMAC. Okay, so do not do that. Always have a solid understanding of what the sentence intends to communicate. Okay, always do this part here, infer the logical meaning before going into the answer choices. And again, logically, if you think about it, the principle is pretty much is very straightforward. The test maker has created if the question is difficult, that means there will be certain things put into the answer choices to make them attractive but incorrect at the same time. And that's why you feel, when initially I asked you about why do you feel that uh, what is difficult in sentence correction, a number of you said that the answer choices are very close. Now the answer choices appear to be close. They are not really very close, but they appear to be close to you because you haven't done a thorough job of steps 1 and 2. Okay, and now that you think about it that way, I hope that it makes logical sense of why you need to spend more than 50% of your time on choice A in order to understand what all is wrong with choice A, and in order to understand what is the meaning that the correct answer choice should communicate. Okay, so let's come to understanding the logical meaning now. So there is that, we know that there is a cause and effect here, right? Now we have to understand what could be the cause and what could be the effect. Clearly, if you think about it, the effect is with regards to filmmakers using diegetic music to create period dramas, right? Well, so again, filmmakers who create period dramas to use diegetic music, that's what the effect is. Now, why would filmmakers do that? Filmmakers will do that because diegetic music invokes a sense of verisimilitude. And remember, what was verisimilitude? It was the idea that art can express truthful version of reality. Now, when you're creating period dramas, that is all in the past, right? Those are historical dramas. So you have to express that reality. How can you express that reality? You can express that reality by utilizing diegetic music. Why? Because it invokes that sense of verisimilitude. Okay, so technically the entire cause is diegetic music invokes a sense of verisimilitude. So a very simple fix is invoking should be verb invokes, and that's going to fix your meaning error and your grammatical error. Okay, so now let's take a look at the answer choices. Choice B is the correct answer. Now, if you notice in choice B, the entire sentence structure has been changed. And that's the beauty of meaning-based approach. If you understand the roles played by each and every entity, and by entity I don't mean specific words, I mean specific chunks of the sentence. If you understand the roles played by each and every entity, even when those entities are moved here and there, are rearranged in answer choices, it would not be as if you're reading a brand new sentence from the start. It would simply mean that, okay, all you have to make sure is that chunks are placed appropriately. Does this make sense? Yes or no? And this can happen only if you focus on understanding the meaning, the roles played by each and every chunk of the sentence. Okay. So what you're seeing here is that the meaning-based approach implying that understanding the chunks of the sentence, putting together the entire meaning of the sentence, there are different facets to it. And each of these facets plays a role in ensuring that you don't get bogged down by the complexity of the answer choices. Okay, and that's why if you think about how Nishant and how Samya improved, they spent that much amount of time in understanding the meaning, and that's why they were able to put it all together. That's why they were able to solve the questions in under a minute. Okay. All right. So choice B, actively referenced in the film rather than confined to the background. This entire modifier explains diegetic music, which is what its intended purpose was. Diegetic music is often used by filmmakers creating period dramas because the cause and effect is also there, because it invokes a sense of verisimilitude. The cause is appropriately stated, and description of verisimilitude is also appropriately presented. So choice B is the correct answer. Now, for those of you who rejected choice B, why did you reject it? Okay, C was quite close, and because of it. It was initially my first choice, but I went for E because of it. Okay, so there are three different things that have happened here that I can gauge from that I can gauge why you answered. Sorry, there are three things that have led to you answering the question incorrectly. Okay, first of all, the pronoun it. Okay, there is definitely conceptual issues with regards to how pronouns are used. So for all of you who have rejected choice B because of the pronoun it being apparently ambiguous, I want you to go through the pronouns module in the course. Okay, it's very important that you understand you have certain misconceptions about the use of pronoun, and that's why you've made this question. That's why you thought that it is incorrect. Okay, so that's my feedback to those of you who rejected choice B because of pronoun it. Now, for those of you who felt that choices B and C were close, it happened because you didn't understand, you didn't infer the intended meaning. That's why when you saw choice C, you thought, oh, choice C also makes sense. But think about it. Filmmakers creating period dramas often use diegetic music because it is actively referenced in the film rather than confined to the background. Now, there were two features presented for diegetic music. You have to figure out which feature makes sense with the effect. Just because it is how it is used doesn't tell me the cause for why filmmakers use it in the first place, right? It is so again, filmmakers are not using it because of how it is used. Filmmakers use diegetic music. These specific filmmakers use diegetic music because of what diegetic music can communicate. So, for those of you who were confused between B and C, do you understand the difference between B and C now? Again, the difference is all from logic perspective. What makes logical sense? It doesn't make sense to say that filmmakers use it because it is used in a certain way. And that is what choice C is telling. Because diegetic music is actively referenced in the film rather than being confined to the background, that is why filmmakers use it. No, that doesn't make logical sense. Okay, and that's why doing that step up front in your step one to infer the logical meaning, that is why it was so important for you to do that. Okay, now there is another grammatical issue which you have to understand. Choice B, actively referenced in the film rather than confined to the background. Now, there may be some people who think that this is written in passive voice. Okay, first of all, it's not in passive voice, it's written as a modifier. Okay, secondly, even if it were listed in a passive voice, that simply using passive voice doesn't make the sentence incorrect. Again, passive voice, there's a purpose behind passive voice. Okay, as long as that purpose is being satisfied, it's absolutely fine to use passive voice. Okay, so again, do not do not reject an answer choice just because of those preconceived notions that passive voice is not appreciated. All right. Now let's take a look at choice D. Choice D, not many people selected. Again, over here, the verb for filmmakers is missing. Choice E. Choice E is wrong because of a single word. In choice E, and has been used instead of because. Okay, so the whole aspect of the sentence presenting a causal relationship disappears in choice E, and that's why choice E is wrong. And yes, choice E is a little bit cut out over here, but this is where everything else in choice E is correct, but instead of because, and has been used, and that's why this is wrong. Okay. All right. So with this, tell me, what all have you understood? From this question, what all have you understood? We need to understand the sentence before reviewing the answer choices. To maintain the meaning intended by the author, meaning is most important and give maximum time to choice A. Absolutely right. Good. Meaning is the key. Need to review pronouns and cause and effect. It is not always ambiguous. Yes. Need to review, okay, infer the meaning. Good. Logical interpretation. Very nice. So again, always infer the meaning. If it's not very clear from the sentence, always do that inference before you move on to the answer choices. Okay. And error analysis almost becomes as a non-existent step if you do your meaning analysis really very well, because again, you're always combining grammar into your meaning as well when you are understanding the meaning of the sentence. Okay. So with this now, we are ready for our next thing here. One thing that I do want to tell you is, I haven't focused a whole lot of time on grammar. It's not that grammar is not important, but how I have used grammar till now is in this session is as a tool to communicate meaning, and that is the main purpose of grammar. It is a tool to communicate meaning. It's the means to the end. Okay, the end being communicate the meaning. Okay, so you always have to make sure that you don't let grammar become the end. And why is that important? It's important because of what I saw. And a lot of students do that. They get so hung up on grammatical rules that they forget what is the role of grammar. Okay, when you ask me certain questions about the pronoun it, or about how it is, if a sentence begins with this, then should it have that, again, all those questions are not really important. What's very important is how is English language being used to communicate the sense that the author wants to communicate. Okay, so don't let grammar become the end. Okay, you definitely need to learn grammar rules so that you know how English language is used to express meaning. Ultimately, it's the meaning that's the key. Okay, now at this point in time, let's understand, why do people falter in SC. I'm going to walk you through a scenario, and I want you to think through the scenario, okay, and tell me how many of you can associate with this scenario. You don't spend sufficient time on choice A to understand the meaning. You don't have a solid basis for finding the correct answer before you move on to reviewing the answer choices. Now, when you look at the answer choices, you're not looking at the answer choices with the intent to eliminate them and select the correct one. You're looking at the answer choices to find clues. You do significant back and forth among choices. You end up getting confused, and you end up making mistakes that could have very well been avoided. How many of you can associate or can relate with this flow? almost all of you. And this is where the thing comes about, that you're not, so when you're solving questions, when you start, if you embrace this process, there'll be certain clues that you will be looking for, whether you are in the right direction of the process, in the right direction in terms of applying the process or not. So one clue that would tell you that you're not in the right direction, or that you're not applying the process the right way, is that if you look at the answer choices with an intent to find clues. If that happens, that means you haven't done your due diligence on steps 1 and 2. Okay, that should be a very good indicator of that. Okay, which means that you need to go back to your choice A and do steps 1 and 2 properly. And again, remember, when you're learning the process, there is no timer that's going on. You may take up to 10 minutes to solve a question when you're learning the process. It's absolutely fine, because you're learning those new skills. But definitely utilize this as a very good tool, to very good indicator of whether you've done the previous 2 steps properly or not. Okay. Now, what is the optimum approach for SC? Step 1, always understand the original sentence, understand the roles played by each entity. Step 2, identify the major errors in choice A. Okay, so if you think about it, the first 2 steps are done on choice A, and that is why we say that you need to spend majority of your time on choice A. The last step is done on choices B, C, D, and E. Okay, and that too, if you do a thorough job on choice A, analyzing the remaining 4 choices becomes really very easy. Why? Because you are analyzing them in the light of what you know from choice A. Okay, that's why you should spend about 60% of your time on choice A. Now, how do you get to 45 to 60 seconds per question? First and foremost, you need to learn how to read a sentence, and you need to read slowly, and you need to pause appropriately. Again, knowledge of a variety of sentence structures is very important. And for this, you need to learn the effective way to read the sentence to understand its meaning, and that's what you do through the Master Comprehension course. Okay, so you learn how to read a sentence so that you can understand the meaning from the first read itself. Okay, second, you need to know the grammar rules. You need to know the grammar rules, such as how do pronouns work, what are the uses of verb ing words, when do you use like, when do you use as, and so on, right? For this, you have to go through the sentence correction portion of the sentence of the course, wherein we teach you each of these conceptual rules. Okay, but again, we'll go through all of this in detail after we solve this last question. So let me bring about the poll here. There you go. Can you please click on still solving? And this time I'm going to remove broadcast results. All right. Go ahead and solve the question. All right, last few seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. All right, so here are your responses. The correct answer here is choice C, which about 45% of students selected. So, am I not audible? Can you guys hear me? Okay, good. All right. All right, sounds good. Let's solve this question now. Now you can. All right. So let's understand the meaning of this sentence. First of all, tell me what was complicated in this sentence, in this question. So less than 50% of the class got this question correct. It is a difficult question, no doubt about that. But what was difficult about it? As versus because, causality, differentiating between thus and to, answer choices seem close. Okay. One more thing that I would want you guys to pay attention to. When you feel that the answer choices seem close, when you feel that the answer choices are close, that's an indication that you haven't done the previous steps correctly. And again, what you'll see is that I'm giving you these clues to figure out when you are doing the process correct, applying the process correctly or not. Okay, so always keep this in mind that when you feel that the answer choices are very close, it means that you haven't done the previous steps appropriately. So definitely go through the solution in detail and understand why that's happening. Okay, now let's come back to this. Carbon intensive and run on batteries, their usage, unlike part, their ability and their inability. Okay, after applying meaning, I found it very easy. Good, very nice. So let's go through this question in detail now. We'll understand the meaning in chunks of the sentence. Delivery drones, unlike conventional modes of transport. So the question is about delivery drones. Let's simplify this as DD. Unlike conventional modes of transport, so there is this comparison stated here. Okay. Um, Unlike conventional modes of transport, unlike these regular modes of transport. Okay. Now, what do DDs do? DD ship goods without becoming carbon intensive. So they ship goods without becoming carbon intensive. Okay, that's the action of DD. With their ability to run on batteries. Now, with their ability to run on batteries, what do you think it explains? From the logic of it, what do you think it explains? Why they do not become carbon intensive. That's what it explains, right? What it's explaining is that because they have the ability to run on batteries, that is why they do not become carbon intensive. Okay? Reason behind why they are not carbon intensive. Absolutely right. Now, how many of you were able to deduce that? Good. And you actively need to do that. As you're reading the sentence, you need to figure out, okay, with their ability to run on batteries, what is the role of this part? The role of this part is to explain why DD do not become carbon intensive. Okay. So you need to do that actively. Now let's read further. Efficiently covering short distances. Now, what is the role of efficiently covering short distances? Let me actually remove your previous responses. Yes. Tell me. It's an effect. Effect of what? They're able to, yes, absolutely right. It's the outcome of the previous thing. Because they run on batteries, they're able to efficiently cover short distances. Absolutely right. Now, however means there is a contrast now. Their inability to cover long distances. Now, this is where the author is saying, yes, earlier the author said that they are efficiently able to cover short distances. Now the author is saying that, that's all well, all good, but their inability to cover long distances may hinder their popularity in the transportation industry. Okay, so because they are not able to cover long distances, this this inability has the potential to basically hinder their popularity in transportation industry. Okay, so that's the contrast here. All right. So really speaking, there are two facts about DD. Two contrasting facts. One is positive feature of DD, less carbon footprint. They are efficient for short distances. Second is because they cannot cover long distances, they may not get popular. Okay. How many of you got this entire essence of the sentence? Okay, there are some of you who didn't get it, and that was evident from when you said why this question was difficult with your responses. Now, one thing that I do want you to understand is that even though just a small part of the sentence was underlined, in this case we read the entire sentence. I disregarded what the underlined portion is. In order for me to understand the meaning of the sentence, I need to understand the entire sentence. Okay, but for partially underlined sentences, the beauty comes about when we get to step two. In step two, we should pay more emphasis to the underlined portion to identify the errors. But we should keep in mind the meaning of the entire sentence. So it's not like we now forget all about the non underlined portion. No, we don't forget about the non underlined portion, but we focus more energy on the underlined section because that's where the errors lie. Okay, so now again we go through the entire list. Really speaking, subject verb standpoint, there are no errors in this sentence. Okay, the main error over here is with regards to this other, which is really a construction error. With their ability to run on batteries, sorry, is not an appropriate expression. You know why? Because this is supposed to express the why aspect. Okay, but in this case, with their ability to run doesn't truly express that why aspect over here, and that's why you need an appropriate expression. So now we go through each and every answer choice. Choice B is wrong. Why? Because you understand with the role of with their ability to run on batteries, you know that if over here we're using running on batteries, we're presenting it as a result. And that is not correct because this was the reason, this was the cause of why DD is why DD doesn't become carbon intensive, right? So now let's take a look at choice C. Choice C is absolutely correct because it uses appropriate expression here. And then does efficiently cover over here, does cover is same as covering. So that is absolutely right. Okay. Now D, choice D, quite a few of you selected choice D, and let me bring about your poll once again. Choice D, can ship goods. Again over here, may the over here the author said that these do ship goods. I mean, that's a deterministic thing. But over here, by using the word can, It's changed the deterministic aspect to ability, and that's not correct. Okay. Then the other thing is they don't run on batteries in order to cover the short distances efficiently. They run on batteries for some other reason. Okay, maybe the reason for them to run on batteries in the first place was that they don't become carbon intensive, and as a result of that they are able to efficiently cover short distances. So here the the logic of the sentence has actually become nonsensical. Okay, and that's why choice D is wrong. Okay, now as far as versus because goes, there's no difference between the two. Okay, they're both used to express the causal relationship. Okay, so there is nothing, so this choice is not wrong because as has been used. Okay, now let's take a look at choice E. Again, may ship goods. That's not what the intended purpose is. The intended thing is that it ship goods. Okay, so that's why this thing is wrong. Then due to is idiomatically incorrect here. Okay, and again, covering, we're not sure as to how. Thus efficiently covering is little weird construction. Okay, so overall if you see, I spent so much of energy in step one because that is the most important step. Once you do step one so very well, everything else becomes so intuitive. Everything else becomes so easy. Okay, and again, the way I'm delivering this solution uh, is reflective of how you would be solving the question on your own when you master this process. Okay. All right. So I have a good question here. I rejected D and E because of can and may. Is it advisable to look at the entire sentence even after one error is found? Absolutely, it is. You were able to reject choices D and E because of can and may because you knew what the original sentence communicates. Okay. Now, for easier questions, yes, you may be able to eliminate D and E that easily. But what is the basis of you eliminating choices A and B? Right? For that, you need to do the entire process in a step-by-step manner. Okay. And again, when you're solving questions in the test, you wouldn't know which one is difficult and which one is easy. Right? So meaning based doing this step one and step two on choice A and spending that much amount of time on choice A is a sure short way for you to answer questions correctly regardless of the difficulty level. Okay, so I want you guys to make that as an intuitive process as your default. Okay. All right, but in this example, does the sentence after semicolon have much value to the discussion? It doesn't. I absolutely agree. In this case, it doesn't. But again, you don't know how the author, what if the underlined portion extended till however, right? In that case, you wouldn't really know what kind of errors is the author banking on. That's why it's very important. You don't know what you don't know, right? I mean, the author has written the sentence, the author has created the answer choices, right? So you have to make sure that you follow the process the same way for all the questions. Okay. Was the third question way too difficult? I got all the others correct except the previous one. Well, third and the fourth question both are of similar difficulty level. All right. In B, ship and running aren't parallel. Is that a correct reasoning? No, it's not the correct reasoning. They should not be parallel. They are not parallel. Okay, they are connected with causal relationship. Okay, what is the difficulty level in terms of score? Well, both these questions are 700 level difficulty. Okay, all right then. So now let's come up with our plan to get to that 90 percentile ability. How do you get to that? The first and the foremost thing is you need to learn to read effectively. Okay, and how do you do that? We'll talk about it. We'll basically utilize master comprehension course, and I'm going to show you the components of master comprehension course. The second thing is you need to master all of grammar, and that's where EGMAT SC course comes into picture. Third is you evaluate where you're at and you iterate through it. Now, Rajat in the beginning of the session explained the entire architecture of our course. you'll be able to see how that architecture comes into play in order to apply the study plan that I'm going to share with you right now. Okay. So what you see is that there's specialized tools for each and every purpose. So let's look at how do you learn to read effectively using the Master Comprehension course. Now, as you saw in the first question that we dealt with, it was a simple sentence, very straightforward sentence, and the context was also straightforward. So understanding the meaning of that sentence was not really a challenge for us. But as you saw, questions 2, 3, and 4, the complexity level of the sentence increased. The context became a little bit more dubious from a. I mean, the context was not really it's something that we were very familiar with, very comfortable with. So we have to make an effort to understand those sentences, and that's where the understanding of building blocks of a sentence comes into picture. How are long sentences formed? How do you deconstruct long sentences? Okay, so that's something which we have done. We have basically put together the strategies that the author uses to construct long sentences. We have put that together to use so that in front of you, so that you can appreciate how you can utilize those strategies in order to comprehend those long sentences. Okay, so that's what we do in the building blocks of sentence module. Next, once you understand how long sentences are formed, then we teach you pause points. Where should you pause in order to understand the components of a sentence? And there are two concept files here, pause points part 1, part 2, and then we put it all together in an application file. And again, each of the sentences that you see in these files is going to be long sentence, the kind of sentences that you see in sentence correction questions. Okay. So really, in fewer than 2 hours, you can go from someone who's a flat reader to someone who reads with a purpose. Okay. And this is exactly how Marcos was able to benefit from Master Comprehension course. Now, Marcos was a native speaker, and he as well benefited immensely from Master Comprehension course. Now, because Marcos is a native speaker, he was able to understand most of GMAT sentences, but because of the extremely formal nature of the language, comprehending what he read took a lot of time. So he was able to understand, but he was spending way too much time. Okay. But once he went through the Master Comprehension course, he understood the role played by each snippet of the sentence, and in the end, he was able to experience an amazing improvement in his reading speed. And this improvement had a huge impact on both his SC and his RC ability. Okay. So again, do not disregard Master Comprehension course. Focus on it and understand that's a basic foundation course for all of verbal. All right. So now let's continue our journey to getting to 90 percentile ability. The second step over here is to master grammar and process. Okay. Now, how can you personalize your learning through eGMAT SC course? Let's look at that. Okay. But one thing that I do want you to understand is you cannot get to 90 plus percentile by just studying. Don't think that you just have to go through concept files once and you will not need to come back to them. No. You need to focus on perfecting. There needs to be a certain goal in mind, and you need to make sure that you continuously iterate in order to get to that goal. Okay. Now, that's where the personalization aspect comes into picture. You have to get to that perfection through process, through insights, and through personalization. So how can you do that? Okay. The first pillar is the process. This is where your conceptual learning and your application aspect takes place. We've spent upwards of 40,000 hours, which is the same as 20 man years, perfecting this process to make sure that we teach you each and every concept in a crisp and precise manner so that you know exactly what you're supposed to know, and that our approach is consistent and works on every question. Okay, and that's where the concept files, the application files, and the practice files have been created for that intent. Now, just teaching these approaches is not enough. We need to ensure that the students actually learn, and that's where the feedback that we provide comes in. We have built special technology in our video files to make sure that these files provide feedback with every concept file and with every application file. Okay, so essentially, as you go through the course, you get feedback every 25 minutes. Okay, and with ability quizzes, you get feedback every 30 hours. So essentially, you don't need anyone else to tell you how you're doing. The score that you get from your application files, from your concept files, from your practice files, give you that feedback so that now you can take a look at that feedback and take corrective actions. Okay. Now, personalization. As I said, no one gets to 90 percentile in the first go. To get there, you need to isolate and you need to focus on areas that require effort, and you need to relentlessly improve on those. Essentially, every student carves his or her own unique journey to ace the test, and that's where the insights from skill data section, which outline where to focus your energy on, and insights from a custom quiz engine, which helps you confirm that you've actually improved, comes into picture. So essentially, your first step towards personalization starts from GMAT Study Planner. Then you utilize the skill data from your ability quizzes, from your custom quizzes, and then you utilize the custom quiz engine to make sure that you have learned what you were supposed to learn. Okay. Now let's take a look at the example of verbs module to show you how these three pillars come in action in the SC course. And it's very important for you to understand this so that you can take the appropriate feedback that the system gives in the right manner. And notice that verbs module is just one of the 10 modules in the SC course, and the entire SC course, in fact, the entire EGMAT course, whether it's SC, CR, RC, or any of the quant modules, is organized in the same manner. Okay, so this is the screenshot from just the verbs module. The first thing that you'll notice is how very comprehensive this module is. Now let's see, how does this module give you feedback? Now, the first three files here teach you the foundation concepts in verbs and tenses. Everything from simple present tense to future perfect tense is taught here. Now, each concept file has specialized quizzes that evaluate you on your conceptual knowledge, very similar to what a private tutor would do. Right, a private tutor gives you the concept, and then he or she gives you questions to make sure that you've learned the concept. Right, now all these quizzes are scored, and you get the insights of how well you've understood this concept. So this feedback is for you, and it is personalized to you. Okay, now once you learn these concepts, we teach you how to apply these concepts in application file 1. Okay, again over here also we gauge your ability to apply, and we give you feedback that is personalized to you. Then we teach you the next set of concepts, and this is where I was talking about the subjunctive verb concept. It's an advanced level concept. So you learn this concept again. You learn this concept after you've gone through the basic concepts and the basic application. Okay, and again you get insights on learning through the quizzes that have been inbuilt, that have been built inside these concept files. Okay, now next there is an application module again. Now what you see over here is this level of the feedback that you get every 15 minutes of your learning makes your learning 5 times more impactful than simply learning from books or learning from courses that don't give you this kind of feedback. Okay, and this level of personalization is possible because of a confluence of technology and teaching methodology both, and that's the area that we've been investing in since our inception. Okay, now let's see how you benefit from it and how that empowers you to reach 90 percentile ability in no time. Now, when you go through this student's dashboard, you see that in the end, he's getting a 60% score, and that is really a low score. Now, what is causing this low score? The causes of that are very evident from his dashboard. If you look at it, the student did not learn verb sequences properly, as indicated by the 67% score. Then he didn't apply those concepts properly, as is indicated from his application file here, 50% score. Furthermore, he has certain conceptual issues with conditional verb as well. So if you take a look at it, if you take a look at these indicators, these insights 1, 2, and 3, it's no surprise that this student did not score 90 percentile in verbs module. And also it's very clear as to how the student can improve his performance as long as he focuses his energy on these 3 activities, that is on verb sequencing, on applying the process and on learning the conditional verbs, he will have no problems in just in improving his percentile in verbs. And I want you to take a moment here to realize the implication of this. While it may seem very difficult to go from 60 percentile to 90 percentile by just studying, using the data, you can get to 90 percentile in just an hour. So people who care about getting to that high ability level now have a sure shot way of getting there. Now let's talk about Ria's success story because that is really very much in line with what we have spoken about right now, utilizing the insights. Ria thought that her SC was very good, but she faltered in SC big time in her first attempt. Then she did the SC course diligently. She looked at the data in her course dashboard and in Scholarium, and she focused selectively on certain areas and was finally able to score 99 percentile in SC. Okay, so I urge you to go through her video interview. This is one of the many examples of students who go from nowhere to acing sentence correction as well as other sections on GMAT verbal. While their starting points are different, they take different times to prepare, but the thing that's common amongst everyone is that they apply the methods that are taught in the course and they leverage Scholarium data and the data in their course dashboard to isolate areas of weakness and to work on fixing those weaknesses. To end, I understand that putting effort to ace the GMAT requires sacrifices, but it's these sacrifices that take us to the next level in our life, as they did for Nishant or for Mansi, who got admits from Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, and or for Samya or for Ria. So you can also accomplish your goal. But it's very clear that you can't get to 90 plus percentile by just studying. Rather, you need to focus on perfecting. So don't think of preparing for GMAT as a linear thing. Okay, you need to think about preparing for GMAT as an iterative process. Okay, an iteration is possible if you get the right kind of data, if you know how to interpret that data, and that is what you'll be able to do as you go through the course that we have set up for you. All right, so with this, we've come to the end of this section as well. And now we are at the last section over here, for which I'm going to invite Rajat back into the session. But in the meanwhile, I would definitely want you to give your ratings for this session and also give me your feedback. And that feedback can include what you learned from this session, what you liked in this session, because that really helps us make sure that we continuously bring you the sessions that are really value add for you. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. All right, so let me invite Rajat back into the session. And again, one thing that I would definitely tell you is that um, you have to make sure that you follow the right kind of process. Okay, so please do that. Your question remained unanswered. What was your questions? Maybe you can put in your question in the Q&A board. All right, so I'll be on mute for just a couple of seconds while I invite Rajat into the session. Okay, and good luck for your preparation, and let us know how we can help you in your GMAT journey.
All right, guys, with that, we've come to the open-ended Q&A. Let me actually share the batch calendar and the session PDF with you. Here's the batch calendar, and here's the session PDF. All right, let me just look at the questions that you have. Okay. While doing answer error choice, should I read the option again and again? For each type of error, verb, pronoun, modifier, etc., sure, should be done in one go. Uh, it depends on what stage you are in. If you're just starting off, you may have to read the original sentence once or twice, probably 3 times. But as you get more and more adept with the approach, the moment you you read a sentence, your brain would automatically start spotting errors. It's like how it happens in word problems, where the moment you read a statement, if you're adept in word problem based questions, the moment you read a statement, your brain starts to form equations. So that's something that's going to happen. So someone says there's so many files in each module, it takes 2 to 3 days uh, um, to cover a module. So how do I make it fast? So I think it depends. So if you need that help, you would need to spend that time. So if you're someone who's at 30% balance intense correction, your focus should be on improving, not ready to speed the process up. But on the other hand, if you're already someone who's starting at 70th percentile, every concept file has a pre-assessment quiz. If you do well in the pre-assessment quiz, and doing that takes about 3 minutes or so, then you don't need to go through the concept, go to the next concept. And that's where you can personalize your learning. And that's why we put those pre-assessment quizzes. We put the effort to build in those pre-assessment quizzes overall. Okay. Sindhuja says, I've opted for Verbal Live and a live course in GMAT Live. And says, I couldn't start off my preparation. How do I freeze? So just write to me at rajat@gmat.com and you know, the day you write to us saying please freeze my account, I will freeze it, and it'll be considered frozen from that day onwards. Nurzan says, I have poor English. Can you get to a score of 700 plus? Absolutely, you can. I mean, let me just share a few interviews with you of folks who've gotten to a score of 700, and some of them have gotten to a score of 700 really, really uh, fast. So here's a guy who improved to 700 in a week. And this is one of our first students. So this is an interview from 2012 that I did, and and so you can really see this guy doesn't have perfect English. He was able to get to a score of 700. Anju has a question where he says that, hey, uh, if I purchase Zobel online, would I get help with study planning? Yes, you get help to the personal study planning tool, which explains how do you create your personalized study plan, and yeah, so using that, you can definitely get a customized study plan. Of course, you get all the support if you have a subject matter doubt. Would help you will help you clarify that. Now, here's another guy. His name is Kong Bui. He was able to get to a V44. And you can see this guy also does not have perfect English. Siraj says, how do I identify the level of questions? I do not want to attempt high level questions since my target is 600 only. So Siraj, I would say while studying from the EG MAT course, we tell you the level of question. While taking the exam, it's not your job to figure that out. So while studying, every EG MAT question is tagged, so you get to know the level, essentially whether it's easy, medium, or hard. Luna says, I've created the personalized study plan in the EGMAT planner. Should I consider the course in EGMAT within the weeks that the EGMAT's personalized plan has suggested, or should I exclusively keep the plan for self-assessment after completing the course? So Luna, with regards to the timelines, consider the timelines to be a good guide, a really good guide. And there's an inherent assumption in those timelines that whenever you're studying with full attention, which means that, hey, if you've budgeted an hour, you're not really browsing to a different website during that hour or so. And it assumes a certain capability that you have based on your starting abilities that you put in. Now, having said that, your goal is to finish the course, whether you're skipping a concept file after doing the pre-assessment, or whether you're going through the concept file completely. So go through the course, then take the ability quizzes, make sure you hit those milestones. So even if you're actually, if the plan suggests you should finish sentence correction in 1.4 weeks and you're taking 1.7 weeks, that's okay, as long as you finish sentence correction, as long as you hit those milestones. Along the same line, if it says 1.4 weeks and you're able to do that in a week, that's okay too, as long as you hit those milestones. Jaskaran says, if someone has the exam in 30 to 45 days, how much time will it take to master? Jaskaran, I can't answer that question without knowing your starting points. So if you write to rajat@gmail.com, I can then give you a response that's more pertinent overall. So Atulya says, I've enrolled in GMAT Live Prep, but I wanted to start from Quant Live Prep sessions, but live sessions won't match with my prep. That's okay, Atulya. First of all, we started the Quant batch today itself, so they may match up. But if they don't, then you can always watch the recordings. You get access to the recordings as soon as you completed your purchase. So just watch the recordings. If you have doubts, post the doubts in the respective forum, and we'll address those doubts. So a student, his name is dash dash 3, says, so I have a 670 in my previous exam. Should I order my ESR? I would say absolutely. You should. It will provide insights which will be very useful in creating a study plan. Is it recommended to take a mock test before starting your preparation? If you haven't, then we do recommend. Otherwise, we also have diagnostics within the GMAT course that can tell you. So you don't need to, but you either need. We need to have your starting point, whether you get that through a mock test or whether we get that through the diagnostics that we have within the course. Doesn't matter. Rahul says, whenever I revise the content, I'm able to solve it. But trying to solve a question a few days without any revision, I get too confused when everything seems to be so messed up. Yeah, it's a very common phenomenon that happens. And it happens especially with those people who do not make notes while learning. So one thing that I'd say is make notes while learning. The second thing is, before let's say you studied sentence correction a week back and you haven't studied it, you haven't been in touch with SC in the past 1 week or so. Before starting to solve a proper SC question, I would recommend that in your mind you go through, okay, how are you going to approach the SC question? What would you do in step 1? What would you do in step 2, and so on and so forth. So do that for about 4 to 5 minutes in your mind. Then solve a few of the questions that you'd previously solved, but you got them incorrect. So that would get you in the groove. This 10 to 15-minute exercise would ensure that your brain warms up. You're not looking for, oh God, how do I approach this question when you solve those sentence correction questions. So just do these simple things, and you'd find that your accuracy would be back up where it was. So hopefully that helps, Rahul. Anshul says, what if I'm getting 350? Can I target a 750? Anshul, you can target any score you want to. It's just that you have to be willing to put in the effort. So 350 to 750 is about 300 hours of effort, uh, more or less, give or take 10% or so, and 300 hours of diligent effort. So again, it's just be prepared for the long journey towards that 750 score. Break it up into relative respective milestones, and then if you're able to do that, then yes, why should you not target that score? We've had students who've done that. It's just that for them, it's been the diligence that has helped them do this. I mean, here's a guy who's improved from a V13 to a V39 overall. So here's a guy who went from a V13 to a V39. Ahmad says, as an American, I don't have the best quant. How can I quickly get to 700 with having to relearn the foundational concept? Again, I might end up sounding like a broken record, but it's diligence. It's diligence. You have to focus on um, on doing things right and going through the courses. I mean, here's a guy who went from, let me just see, who went from Q38 to a Q50. Um, you can really see that. Overall, let me actually see. And he got an admit from Wharton. So all right, how will my doubts be cleared in verbal online? That's a great question. With every entity that we have in the GMAT course, whether it's a live session or an on-demand learning session, we have what we call as an internal forum or a dedicated forum. And uh, and so let's say you attempt a concept file or an application file or an official guide exercise or a question in Scholaranium. If you have a doubt, just go to the relevant forum. Now, the beauty of this is because you have that forum dedicated to that question or that concept, doubts that others have posted will be there as well. And 99 out of 100 times, we've had 35,000 students go through this. 19 out of 100 times the doubt will have been answered. In the so even before you pose that doubt, you'll get the answer to it. In the unlikely event that your doubt has not been answered, you can pose the question, and only our experts are allowed to respond to your question. So it's not that you're going to get a response from a student, you're going to get a response from the experts who created this course, and then you'd get a response within 1 business days. So our support is actually, we're known for our support. We're known for the quality of responses that you get. Ram says I opted for live prep. Can I join the upcoming session? Yes, you can. Lavish says, why are we talking about test repeaters? What should a first timer do? We actually are not talking just about test repeaters. It's just that a lot of the questions that came in were from people who were at a certain score, and to give them that benchmark, it's important to really talk about the starting score and then how much they improved to. Otherwise, you don't have that benchmark overall. But 60% of our students are first time test takers, uh, and so yeah, I mean, what you should do is no different from what a person who has taken the GMAT already would do. I mean, you have to really figure out what your baseline is. You can do that by taking a mock test, or or by taking our own diagnostics. Then you have to build those milestones and aim towards hitting those milestones. So Lavish, hopefully that helps. Okay, there's another question. Should one attempt Scholaranium after completing all the files or as a checkpoint in the middle of the SC module? After completing all the files. Lakshya says, is it advisable to study quant and verbal side by side to finish one section and then hop on to the other? Uh, so we recommend that people do one section at one time and then only move to the other. That's something which 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 we recommend. We don't recommend working professionals to study both quant and verbal. We found in our experience that it does more harm than good. Okay, all right, guys. With that, I want to thank everyone for being a part of this webinar today. It was a real pleasure conducting this webinar. I also want to thank you for all your questions. It was great. It's good to really see those questions. I mean, we learn from you as much as you learn from us. So the appreciation is mutual. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you guys on egmat.com. Goodbye and have a good day. Okay, one more thing actually, sorry, before I go. Remember, we have the number properties webinar tomorrow. If you've not registered for that one, you can register for the same over here. Let's see this pop in. Yeah, you can register for the same over here. How do you get to use Scholaranium? So while I'm doing, I saw a few more questions come in. Is it after you purchase the course? Yes, after you purchase the course, you get access to Scholaranium. TK says, I'm currently scoring 530 with 69th percentile in verbal and 16th percentile in quant. TK, so what's your question? Your target is 700 and you just have 3 weeks. So, I mean, depending on the schools that you're aiming for, I would recommend that you spend, you first of all take a week off if you can. I mean, that'll give you time for intensive study. And then the second thing that I would really say is, spend 1 week just on quant. I mean, you need your quant score to get to at least a Q42, Q43 or so. And so that's what I would do. So you can do it in 3 weeks as long as you spend time on it. I mean, I have someone who's done that, but she's been very, very diligent with regards to get into those scores. So this is something that I would really say. She was actually at 590. She was able to get to a 750 in about 3 weeks. So hopefully that helps, Tiggy. And with that, I want to thank everyone for hanging back. And if you have any questions, you can write to me at rajat@e-gmat.com. Thank you very much and have a good day.